I am joined today by Lisa Maynard-Atem, who is the founder of The Social Word and is a social media expert, and she is going to be giving us a really great webinar talking about how you can use social media during lockdown. So Lisa, thank you very much for joining us.
Hi, Chris. Thank you very much for having me. It's really great to be on. I'm really looking forward to presenting. So yeah, thank you very much for having me.
Well, thank you very much. So Lisa does have a presentation. So we will be going through the presentation, and then if you do have any questions, feel free to leave them in the chat box. If you're watching this on Facebook as well, please do comment, and after the presentation, there will be time for some questions, and we are very much looking forward to hearing from you all. So Lisa, please take it away.
Thank you, Chris. Right, hi everyone. Thank you for joining us. I really do appreciate it. Like I said, really looking forward to presenting. So yes, let's get started. Right, so I'm going to be talking about social media usage during lockdown, both from a personal and a professional point of view. But just to tell you a little bit about me, so I work primarily as a social media strategist. So what I do is I go into businesses and I advise them on how to use social media from a strategic point of view in a way that supports their business objectives and obviously helps to impact their bottom line in a positive way. My thing is I'm all about making social media simple. What I have tend to find in my time working in social media is that sometimes we make things a bit more complicated than they need to be. So my thing is to make it as easy to understand as possible rather than, throwing in loads of buzzwords and acronyms that people might not necessarily be sure about. So I'm very much about social media made simple. I have over 10 years experience. So I started working in social media in around 2008, 2009. And how I got started was many years ago, used to work as a fashion stylist, and I needed a free way to promote myself. I knew my way around a computer, so I set up a Facebook group and a Twitter page because Instagram didn't exist at the time. And I basically just started promoting my services on social media. And I found that I grew really quickly on Twitter. And as a result of that, people were asking me for advice. In fact, more people were asking me for advice on social media than they were for styling, which for me worked out quite well because as it turned out, I didn't really like being a stylist. So I started giving out bits of information for free because I was learning myself. And then fast forward a couple of years, I got the opportunity to pitch to Harrods. And I went through, I think, about 8 months worth of interviews. And then at the end of that, I was offered a 3-month contract. So I started working for them in September 2010. And at the time, they had just over 30,000 followers across Facebook and Twitter. I set up their Instagram in October 2011. And over a period of just over 6 years, we grew the account to just over 1.1 million followers. So by the time I came to leave, they'd gone from just over 30,000 followers to just over 2.5 million. And that was over a period of 7.5 years. And it was obviously all organic growth. As a result of that, I was nominated for an Outstanding Woman in Retail Award. Sadly, I didn't win, but obviously it was great to be nominated. And we hit 1 million followers in about January 2017. And after that, I decided that I then wanted to move on and kind of go and do my own thing. So I left my Harrods family in November 2017 and set up The Social Word in December 2017. So that's a little bit about me. Anyway, moving on. Right, so social media usage during lockdown. I think it's safe to say, and we all know that the social media usage has increased exponentially in the last, 9-10 weeks. There's been a 25% increase in engagement on Instagram and TikTok. There's been a 72% increase in ad content by influencers, and Instagram Live, Twitch, Zoom, and TikTok, the usage has risen dramatically. Chris and I were saying earlier that, there was a period where I was going on Instagram and all I was seeing were Instagram Lives. People were going crazy for Instagram Live. So obviously, due to us all being on lockdown and being at home, our usage of social media has increased massively. One of the things that I noticed early on during the, I would probably say in week 3 or 4 of lockdown, there was a lot of panic posting from brands. Now, just to say, I totally understand why this was the case. A lot of us, our physical businesses had closed down, our stores had closed down. So people were worried, we were going into the great unknown and we didn't know what was going to happen. So like I said here, it was understandable worry, both personally and professionally. But yeah, a lot of businesses, a lot of brands were like panic posting just to keep themselves front and mind with their audiences, with their customers, which as I said, is completely understandable. And as I said earlier, there were Instagram Lives absolutely everywhere. And there's been an increase in anxiety, especially from a social media point of view. I personally have been speaking to quite a lot of people who have said that social media has made them feel anxious, and they felt like they were under pressure to take up a new hobby, learn a new skill, have Zoom chats with friends, and in some cases they've said they felt an increased feeling of isolation, which is really, really sad. But yeah, a lot of people have been saying that social media is making them feel anxious because they're seeing what everybody else is doing and they feel the need to be doing something. So yeah, in terms of social media anxiety, some of the points that I wanted to share today were really practice social media distancing. Take the time to be off social media, even consider turning your phone off. I personally, I try to give myself, because I work in social media, I try to give myself a minimum of an hour every day where I don't look at my phone, I don't engage, I don't do anything. I think it's really important, especially when you're somebody like me who is on social media all of the time. It's really, really important to have time away from your social media platforms. Don't get me wrong, engaging with people and connecting with people is great, but I don't necessarily think that it's healthy to spend too much time on social media and too much time on your phone. So do try to use social media distancing wherever possible. Another point to mention is, unfollow accounts that lead to you having negative thoughts. If you are following somebody or something that doesn't make you feel good about yourself or makes you look at your life in a negative way, you can mute them or you can unfollow them. And that's not a nasty thing. That's not a negative thing. At the end of the day, we all have to protect our mental health, especially as this week is Mental Health Awareness Week. We all really need to make the effort whilst we're on lockdown to make sure that we are protecting our mental health as much as possible. So if you are following or engaging with things that don't necessarily add to your mental health in a positive way, I would suggest muting them or unfollowing them. In terms of being offline, try to keep yourself as active as possible. In the first couple of weeks of lockdown, I was just literally on my phone all the time. And in the end, I had to really impose a kind of routine with myself. So I was taking myself out for walks for an hour and just getting away from my phone and trying to keep myself busy offline, which meant I was spending a little less time on my phone. Another thing is, practice social media kindness. I often think that if you want to feel, one way of feeling good about yourself is to make people feel good about themselves. So I make sure, you should be engaging on social media anyway, but I always make sure that I allocate time to liking people's comments, leaving posts. If somebody posts a really nice picture of themselves with their kids, I make sure I leave a nice comment about it. If you want to make others feel good. So if you want to feel good about yourself, I find one way of doing that for me feeling good about myself is to be really positive and kind of sharing like nice comments and dropping DMs saying, I really love that picture that you posted. I really found that video you shared, funny or engaging. So yeah, spread a little kindness on social media. And the other point I wanted to make, which is really, really important, is that social media does not validate you as a person. Now, social media is absolutely fantastic. It's a brilliant, brilliant tool, but it's just a part of your life. It is not every single part of your life. I work in social media. I'm on social media all the time, but I always say to people, social media is what I do. It's not who I am. So, please don't fall into the trap of thinking that social media validates you as a person, because it doesn't. It's just another part of your life. Right, so some points here to remember. It is only social media. I always say to people, do not take it too seriously. There are far bigger things going on in the world right now than social media. So by all means, engage with it, use it, but don't take it too seriously. It is only social media at the end of the day. It's not the end of the world. Another point to mention is that you are only ever seeing a chapter. You're not seeing the whole book. I think one of the things I find is that a lot of people find themselves comparing their lives to what they see on social media. And whilst I get that, you have to remember that you're only seeing a snapshot. Like I said here, you're only seeing a chapter. And even then, it's not the whole chapter. It's only an aspect of that chapter. So please try not to fall into the trap of thinking that your life is that's a total reflection of somebody else's life. And also, not everything you see on social media is an absolute representation of the truth. People don't necessarily put out their real selves in terms of when they're having a bad day, or if they don't want to get out of bed, or they're just not having a great time. We don't tend to post those things. We tend to post our highlights. We tend to post our show reels. We tend to post the positives over the negatives. So always bear that in mind. Don't use social media as a benchmark for your own life, because it's not a true reflection of what real life actually is about. And as I've said here, as I said earlier, not everything you see on your feed is an absolute representation of the truth. Always bear that in mind. It is so easy, and I have done this myself, to get swallowed up by what you see on social media. But please always remember that what you're seeing is not necessarily the absolute 100% truth. And again, as I said earlier, social media should not be used. It should never be used as a benchmark for your own life or personal circumstances. And most importantly of all, right now at the moment, please remember that we are in the grip of a pandemic. You know, our emotions and our feelings are probably going to be heightened by everything that's going on. And, you know, going on social media and looking at other people's lives and comparing your life to theirs is not necessarily going to help that. So just remember that the current situation will be having an effect on all of us from an emotional and mental perspective. So please do bear that in mind. So please don't get too hung up on your social media. Social media should be fun. It should be engaging. It should be a way of just connecting with people. It shouldn't be something that's making you feel negative or have any kind of negative thoughts. If it is, as I said, mute the accounts, that some of the accounts that you're following that make you feel this way, or unfollow them. Right, so moving on. So in terms of brand usage during these uncertain times, I've said here, during these uncertain times, brands should be focused on value content, not vanity content. It's really important right now, especially as with a lot of businesses, your physical stores are closed, your physical premises aren't open. It's really important that you are creating content that helps your audiences, that helps your customers. Value is so key right now. People are looking to brands and to the businesses they support for help. So how can you help your customers? How can you give them advice that's going to help them at home? For example, I've started something called the social sessions, and that came about because of my mum. So my mum is having to self-isolate for 12 weeks because she has underlying health issues. This has meant that she's on social media a lot more than she normally would be. And she was saying to me, she said to me one night, you know what, I'd really like something that explains social media in a really simple way, because she's not an expert. She goes on Facebook, she messes around, she has an Instagram account, but she's not entirely sure what she's doing. So I developed something called the social sessions, which I share every day on my Social Word Instagram account, where it just explains things really simply, like what is social media? You know, what is a follower? What is reach? What are impressions? What is a GIF? You know, it explains things in a really simple way. So at this moment in time, more so than anything, you should be adding value to your audiences. You should be adding value to your customers. And if you're not sure what that value looks like, ask them. Instagram stories provides you with the functionality of asking questions and running polls. So if you're not sure what value looks like for your brand and for your audience and your customers, you can always ask the questions. And as I've said here, how can you help your audience? It is really key that you're helping rather than hindering, that you're putting value content over vanity content. There's nothing wrong with vanity content, but right now with the situation that they're in, like I said earlier, people are looking for help. They're looking for assistance. They're looking for support. I said here, provide useful information that can be applied at home. Like, you know, I was searching online. I was searching on Instagram the other day for a good shampoo for Afro hair. I then wanted to go and order on Amazon. So, you know, and I found an account that was actually providing that information, which was fantastic for me. Another point, you know, share positive and uplifting messages. Right now, let's be honest, we're not all feeling great. You know, this situation is quite scary. It is quite unsettling. And, you know, I'm very much about positivity and putting out messages that help to uplift people. Obviously, don't go over the top with it. Don't be doing it every 5 minutes. But definitely allocate some of your social airtime to putting out positive messages that are going to make people feel good, make people feel a little bit better, even if it's just temporarily. I think it's important to be sharing updates about your business, but obviously if they are relevant and appropriate, because obviously we're going to reopen at some stage, and you want to be preparing your audience and your customers for that. You know, when you reopen, what are your opening hours going to be? What services are you going to offer? You know, what are the waiting times going to be like? You know, start to think about updating your audience and your customers on your business, where it's at now and where it will be in the future. Because it won't be, you know, July the 4th, which I know is the date that's been given for salons and hairdressers, is not that far away. So please start thinking about that now. It's really important that you do that. And my final point is be honest. You know, I think now people they're looking for honest content. They're not just looking for value, they're looking for honesty. They're looking for content that resonates with them and that they can identify with. Nobody's saying that you should like lay out your whole life story, but I do think you should be honest, and you should be transparent, and you should be as authentic as possible. So this is a really, really key one. And the reason why I wanted to talk about this is because what I have often found is with businesses is that they often want to talk about what they want to talk about. And I get that. I totally understand that. But ultimately, when you think about it, you are not creating this content for yourself. You're creating it for your customers and your audience. So you've always got to put them first. They should always be front and center when it comes to creating content. So your audience always comes first. Your content is ultimately not for you. It really is. Obviously, in the long term, you want it to help your business, but the best way to help your business is to put your customers and your audience at the center of what you're doing from a content point of view. And ask your audience what they want to see. What I often get from brands and from businesses is, oh, we don't know what to post. We don't know what to say. Well, firstly, what is your business about? Like, for example, when I was at Harrods, our core content pillars, or content subjects, if you like, were the different departments within the store. So they were women's wear, they were men's wear, there were beauty, there was food, and there was home. So those were our foundational content pillars. And then anything else, like events, was layered on top of it. So what are the different aspects of your business that will be of interest to the wider world? Because let's not forget that not everything you do as a business is going to be of interest to an outside audience. So do bear that in mind. And ask your audience questions. I think I said this, I touched on this earlier. If you are not sure what your audience wants to see, ask them. Reach out to a few of your brand advocates and ask them what they want to see. Run polls on Instagram stories. Ask questions on Instagram stories. If you're not sure what your audience wants to see, the best way to find out is to ask them. And also that will make them feel included in your brand. That will make them feel included in your journey. So always ask your audience. Another thing is user-generated content. Now it's very challenging for us to create content. So one of the things I'm doing with some of my clients and some of the businesses that I work for is I'm going back through their archives and seeing what content can be repurposed. And one of those areas that I'm looking at is user-generated content. So, for example, you could run a story on stories every Thursday, like Throwback Thursday, asking people to submit pictures of the pictures that they have taken of your business or of your brand, and you can repost some of the best pictures on your stories. User-generated content, I think, is an underused resource in terms of social media content as a whole. So, look at user-generated content, especially now, like I say, when it's challenging. We can't necessarily create content as easily as we would have done previously before lockdown. So really look at content that your audience has shared about your business or your customers have shared. And if there's good pieces of content in there, use them. Great way to build advocacy, great way to build love and support for your brand. So yeah, always be thinking about user-generated content. That should be a core part of your content strategy. Said here, use the challenge feature on Instagram stories to set weekly simple challenges. That's another way of generating content. You never know what somebody's going to produce. So that's another great way of generating user-generated content. And as I've said here, making your content about others will benefit your brand. Always remember that your audience and your customers come first. And ultimately, making your content about them will benefit your brand in the long term. Right, moving on. Authenticity is key. So this should go without saying, but I do really think, especially now in the current period, in the current time, I think authenticity is really, really important. I really think that you should all be focusing on creating and sharing relatable content. Polished images are fantastic and they're great, but firstly, we're not necessarily able to do that at the moment. So how relatable is that content? And secondly, people want to see something real. As I said before, people want to see something that they can relate to. People want to see something that that resonates with them. So don't be afraid to share content that's maybe a little less polished than it normally would. Don't, share that stuff. That's the kind of stuff I love to see. I really, and I love to see behind the scenes as well. So, take people behind the scenes of your brand. How are you preparing for reopening? People want to see these things. They're interested in what goes on behind the brand. They're not just necessarily interested in seeing the end result or the finished product or the end service. So think about when you're creating content, make it relatable. Don't worry about it being overly polished. Don't worry about it being perfect. Just make sure it's relatable and it's authentic. Said here, share your story. How have you coped during lockdown? Lockdown has affected everyone. It's affected all of us. Now, I'm not saying that you should share your whole story, but you should definitely share aspects of it. And don't be afraid to do it as well. Again, people will relate to that. That will really, really resonate with people. So don't be afraid to share your story. Obviously, share what you are comfortable with sharing, but don't be afraid to open up and be honest about what your situation has been like during lockdown. And I said here, which I mentioned earlier, don't worry about content being overly polished. That's really not what people are looking for right now. Don't get me wrong. We all love to see a pretty image and a pretty picture and a great video. But I don't think that people are really looking for overly polished content right now. And as I said, it's challenging to create it anyway. So don't worry about your content looking absolutely pristine. That's not the biggest thing right now. Avoid any messaging that could be interpreted as insensitive or appropriate. Now, one of the things that I'm very mindful of at the moment when I'm posting on behalf of clients is humor. Now, obviously, we all need a laugh. I love to have a laugh. I love to have fun. But I do think that we need to be mindful of not being inappropriate. You know, we need to be mindful of not making jokes about things that people might take the wrong way, that people might see as offensive. So, you know, by all means, inject a bit of humor into your content. We all need something lighthearted, especially now. But just be mindful of treading that line between being humorous but not being overly humorous to the point where it's inappropriate. So just bear that in mind. And I've said here, be honest and realistic, but don't be negative. Now, we all know that there are people on social media who are on there and they leave very negative comments. They're trolls. They're not very nice. And I think whilst I think honesty and realism is really, really important, I think it's equally important not to let that tip over into the realms of being overly negative. There's nothing wrong with being truthful. There's nothing wrong with being real about stuff. But don't let it go to the stage where it's considered as really negative. So just be mindful of that. So this is another one. Now, this might seem a little bit obvious, but I am always amazed by the amount of people who post content on social media and then they just sit there. It's like, I'll just post this now. I'll post something and then I'll just wait for people to come and engage. You know, the clue is in the name, social media. You need to be social. You can't just wait for people to come to you. You need to go out to people, especially if you want to build an engaged audience that you then at some point want to convert to consumers and paying customers. Social media is not a one-way street. It's a dialogue. It's not a monologue. So you should very much treat it in that way. Don't be one of those people who post content and just sits and waits for loads of likes and loads of comments, because the likelihood is that that's not going to happen. You know, if you want people to engage with you and share your content and share your message, then you have to be willing to do the same for other people. So always be social. And as I've said here, people are craving connection now more than ever. Engagement is vital. It is so important that you are liking comments, you are responding to comments, you are engaging with other people's posts and what they're talking about and what they're sharing. You know, don't just, like I said before, don't just post and wait for others to engage with you. And a lot of people do this. A lot of people do it. They will post content and then they're just waiting for people to come and engage. And then when they don't, they're disappointed. As I've said here, make time to engage with other accounts daily. I allocate a minimum of an hour every day to engaging with other people's content, with other people's accounts. Like I say, if I want people to engage with me and what I'm sharing, then it's only right that I engage with other people. And like I said, it is called social media. So you need to be social. And as I've said here, go beyond a like, leave meaningful comments, repost, and reach out via direct messages. It's called social media, so be social. I know it sounds a bit obvious, but a lot of people don't do it. So make sure that you're using the channels in the way that they're meant to be used. So this is something that I really wanted to spend a little bit more time than everything else talking about, because obviously at some stage our businesses are going to reopen and we need to start thinking about what that content is going to look like, you know, now. We're not waiting till we reopen, but we need to start thinking about it now. So for me, for example, I am now starting to think about, actually, when my clients' businesses reopen, what imagery can I use? Because a lot of the imagery, the content library, the image library that I currently have, it doesn't feature anybody wearing PPE. It doesn't feature anybody, obviously, with social distancing, because all of this content would have been gathered previous to lockdown, previous to Corona. It would have been captured a long time ago. So I'm very conscious of the fact that probably all of the content, bar maybe one or two images, don't bear those things in mind. So the reality is that we now have to start thinking about what is that content going to look like when the business reopens. It's going to look very different. So it's really important that you start thinking about that now. I've said here that use Instagram stories to maybe start a waiting list. A session stylist I know called Lisa Farrell, she did this maybe about a week ago, maybe a week or two ago. She basically used her stories to actually start building a waiting list for when she eventually reopens her business. Said here, you need to have an action plan and think about communicating what services you'll be offering. Maybe your services have changed in light of Corona, and you know what you did before. Maybe your services have had to change. So what services, what do those new services look like? What revised services will you be offering? So that's something to think about. How will services be carried out? That's a really, really important, because you've got to remember, we've been at home for what, 8 or 9 weeks now. And people are going to be scared to leave their homes. I know that I'm a little bit nervous to go out, to go to a salon again, because obviously I live with my mum and my mum has underlying health issues. So I'm going to be very conscious of where I go, because I don't want to come into contact with anybody who may have the virus and then I bring it home and I pass it on to my mother. That's the last thing I want. So I'm going to be very conscious of where I'm going. So, and I would want to see the salon that I go to, I would want to see on their social media that they do have PPE. They are adhering to the social distancing guidelines of 2 meters. They do have perspex in between the stations. I would want to see that, because that would make me more comfortable and it would make me feel easier about going to them. So think about think about showing how the services will be carried out. And I put here PPE measures and in brackets reassurance. People are going to be looking for reassurance. A lot of people are scared to leave their homes. A lot of people are paranoid. So if you're wanting your customers to come to you, you need to show them that you have all the necessary measures in place. Do you have revised opening hours? At waiting times, obviously people are going to maybe have to wait a little bit longer. You need to communicate that to your audiences and to your customers so that they know in advance. You don't want them arriving on the day and then finding out, oh, you have to wait for an hour. So if you do have revised opening times, if it's applicable, let people know via your social media channels. And if you have waiting times, if you have an idea of what your waiting times are going to be, do share that information and communicate that information via your social media channels. How many people will be allowed on the premises? It's not going to be like it was where people can just file in and out. It's going to be very, very different now because of social distancing. So you need to factor that in as well. How many people will be allowed on your premises at any one time? Obviously, I know these things won't be straightforward. I'm not saying for 1 second that they are, but the point that I really want to drive home is really, really think about what your content is going to look like. I know it's not going to be simple, and I know it's not going to be straightforward, but you need to think about that communication now, so that when you come to reopen, that you are prepared. And this is an example. So Lisa Farrell, she used her stories a couple of weeks ago to start building up her client waiting list, which I thought was a really clever thing to do. So this is something that anybody could do. So I just wanted to include this image as an example. That's taking a bit of time. So again, content after COVID-19. So as I've said, show the progress you're making towards reopening. Easiest way, this is just an example, but could you talk about the easiest way to get to your salon, taking into account social distancing? How will you capture brand content? If you want to get pictures of your stores empty, or if you want to get pictures of your stores, are you going to have to do it when the store is empty, before opening or after closing? Imagery to show PPE, safety measures, which I've already mentioned. Think about what's in your images and videos. For example, with people, you're not going to be able to have people close together. So if you're capturing content of people, those people will have to be 2 meters apart. You will have to convey that in your imagery. So that's another thing to think about. Can staff take pictures? Can staff take pictures? Because that will mean a lot of the time constantly touching their phone. And from a hygiene point of view, is that going to be feasible? Again, that's just another consideration. Would you want to think about upskilling your customers so that they can take good selfies, because you may be limited in terms of doing it? Obviously, you're going to have to take into account, you're going to have to adapt your procedures to take into account social media distancing, wearing PPE, all of those things. All of those things are going to add time to your day. So are you realistically going to be able to take pictures of customers' hair and do things like that? Also, do you want to be touching your phone too often? No, not really. So maybe you want to think about upskilling your customers in terms of teaching them maybe how to take good selfies. another consideration. Another point I wanted to mention here was as well, keep yourself updated with daily government press conferences so you can react if necessary. One of the things I've done is, in terms of my clients, I watch the government press conferences every single day, just from an information point of view, because then that informs the content that I then share, because I wouldn't want to share something that was not on message. Or, for example, when Boris Johnson did his announcement a couple of weeks ago, and we had quite a few people getting in touch asking us if the stores were reopened because they were confused by the message. I then had to put out content that clearly said that the stores were closed but would reopen at some point in the future. So I think it's always advisable just to keep an eye on the press conferences, just to make sure you're aware of what they're saying, because that may inform your content in some way. Right, so insights. Now, I am obsessed with data. I think data is so important when it comes to creating content. You need to know who your customer is. You need to know where they are. You need to know when they are most active. You need to know the gender split. You need to know the split in terms of different countries and different cities. It's not the sexiest side of social media, but it is one of the most necessary. In fact, for me, it's probably the most necessary, because data informs everything you do from a content perspective. So I've said here, ensure that you are checking your insights daily to see what content is performing well and what isn't. Look at what times your audience are active. Post at those times, but also at real life times. Now, what I mean by that is, if you go into your insights on Instagram, for example, you can see it clearly tells you what days are best to post and what times are best to post. Now, obviously, you should be posting at those times, but you should also take into consideration real life situations, like journeys to and from work are the perfect example. Whenever I'm on the train or on the tube to work, I'm always on my phone. And that's normally between, I would say, anytime from like 7:15, 7:30 maybe, to like 8:45 in the morning. And like on my journey home as well, if I'm on the train, I'm always on my phone. So bear those times in mind. Don't just post at the times that your insights tell you to post. Post at real life times. Like sometimes I will post at 10 o'clock at night, because often many of us are just in bed, just scrolling on our phones. So I will sometimes post late at night, because then I find that sometimes gets great engagement. So post at times that are within your insights and also outside of your insights. And always test. For example, I've been posting for a client, and their best time to post is between 10 a.m. and 10:30 a.m. Now, that's not on their insights. Their insights are something along the lines of 12 p.m., 3 p.m., 6 p.m., and 9 p.m. But I found that time between 10 a.m. and 10:30 a.m. is the optimum time for them in terms of posting. So that's when I've been posting content. But obviously, once that starts to not be the case, I will change that up and try different times. So follow your insights, and also post at real life times. Next, look at what days your audience are most active, and perhaps reserve those days for essential information. Now, that's just an idea. Obviously, you don't have to reserve those days for essential information. But if you know that your audience are most active at, say, 6 p.m. on a Thursday and 2 p.m. on a Wednesday, maybe you do want to reserve those days to put out key information about your business, about your opening times, about your waiting times. So that's just something to think about. Obviously, you don't have to do it, but I would bear that in mind. Look at where your audience is and also the gender split. That's really, really key as well. There's no point in posting content that is heavily aimed at a female audience if 78% of your audience is male. And I know that sounds a really obvious thing to say, but you would be amazed at the number of people who don't even look at their insights. They just post what they post, and they just wait for something to happen. So it's really important that you know who your audience is. If your audience is majority male, then your content should be catered for a majority male audience. If your content is a 50-50 split, then 50% of your content should be aimed at women, and 50% of your content should be aimed at men. And wherever possible, create content that works for both. Look at your reach, look at your impressions, look at your profile visits. And as I said here, your data should be your absolute best friend when it comes to social media. Like I said, it's not the sexiest side of social media, but it is the most valuable. It is very, very important, especially now when you're going to be reopening your businesses. You really do want to know when your audiences are active. You really do want to know when your audiences are online, because you're going to be wanting to communicate with them as much as possible. So once you go back, once your business is reopened, it's going to be really, really imperative to know when your audience are on, when they are most active, where they are, who they are, and what countries and what cities they're based in. And I've just finished here by saying, always check your insights. I check my insights probably 15 times a day, if not more. Sometimes I'm always checking the data. I'm always looking at the data to see, okay, I posted this an hour ago. How has it performed? Has it performed well within that hour, or hasn't it? You know, always be checking your insights is so important. And that's it from me, guys. So I hope you've enjoyed that presentation, and I hope you found it really, really useful. We're going to answer some questions now. So I'm just waiting for Chris to come back. So thank you very much.
And there we go. Well, thank you so much, Lisa. That was really, really good. Very insightful there. And I'm sure that a lot of people definitely enjoyed that. Lots of lovely comments already coming through. So, yeah, like I said, we'll go through some questions. If you do have any queries about social media, please do let us know either on the Facebook chat or in the chat here on Click Meeting. And I have also seen a few people have been asking regarding guidelines for reopening. If you do go to the Professional Beauty website, we have put up an article today, actually, just sort of talking a few industry bodies have sort of laid out a few early guidelines. Obviously, we're still waiting for the official government one. So do have a look at that if you're interested. So first of all, so we've got a message from Amanda. She said, a friend said I should put a post on Facebook for my business every day. Is this a good idea?
I personally think it is good to post on a daily basis. I post for my clients every single day. But what I would say is make sure that that information that you're sharing is valuable. Don't just post for the sake of posting. Your social airtime is so important, especially now. So what I would personally do is develop a content plan. I know it can be a bit of a monotonous task and it's not the most exciting thing, but I have I have spreadsheets. I have individual spreadsheets for every single client, and I know what I'm posting on a day-to-day basis, because I want, especially now that businesses are closed, I want to make sure that the information I'm putting out is as valuable to them and to the audience as possible. So yeah, I do definitely think that it's worth posting every single day, but just make sure that your messages are on brand and that the content is valuable. It's not just vanity content, because you're just losing precious time there.
Great. And I think we've got a very similar question from Lena as well, who said, would you say to put stories up every day? Sometimes I struggle what to put out there, as I used to always post treatment pictures. I want to engage with my clients. So do you think it's okay to post non-beauty related posts?
Oh, definitely. Like I said during my presentation, at the moment, we're all on lockdown, or the majority of us are on lockdown. So it's not as easy to create content as it would have been previously. So there's absolutely nothing wrong with venturing outside of hair content. But again, I would just say make sure that content is relevant to your audience. And if you're not sure what to post, ask them, run a poll and see what they like. Ask them questions. People love to be included. People love that feeling of being included. So include them in your content creation process. What do they want to see? And with regards to posting on stories, definitely post on stories every day. I found with my own personal accounts, I never used to post on stories that much. I was more about the feed and, obsessed with my feed. And then I started posting videos. I started doing videos on a daily basis. And I started posting, them on stories every single day. So I do videos every day now. And my engagement has increased by about 37%. So I definitely think it is worthwhile posting on your stories every single day. It's a pain. Sometimes I get up and think, oh God, I don't want to do this. But I just have to. And what I tend to do is when I know what I'm going to talk about, I will bulk create content. Like this morning, I filmed about 4 or 5 videos. So because I know what I'm like, I'll get up one day and be like, oh, I really can't be bothered with this. I just don't want to do it. So wherever you can, if you can allocate time, providing you know what you're going to be talking about to bulk creating your content, I would definitely do it. Because I know me, I will get up tomorrow morning and think, I'm just going to stay in bed and eat Weetabix because I'm not going to get up and do any videos. So that would be my advice. But definitely use stories every day. Stories is fantastic for engagement. I get more engagement on stories than I do on my feeds.
And there's so many great options, aren't there, on Instagram stories now in terms of what you can actually, you've got polls, you've got questions. There's so much there to get engagement.
There's loads, and they're bringing out, they're updating it all of the time. They're bringing out new functionalities. Like, I'm so excited by Instagram now. I got to the stage where I got a bit bored of it, and now it's like, ooh, what are they bringing out today? What are they bringing out this week? So yeah, it's really, really good, and they're really doing a lot to help businesses, especially small businesses. I love those little stickers, where you can shout out small businesses. I try and use those as much as possible. I absolutely love them.
Great. We've got a question from Adele who says, when you engage with other accounts, do you do so as yourself or as a business account?
So I have I personally have two accounts. So I have the Social Word, which is my it's purely social media. I don't put anything personal on there. And then I have my Stylisa account, which is my personal account. Now, depending on who posts on what, I just split it that way. So with some people follow the Social Word and they follow Stylisa. So if they engage with the Social Word, I'll engage purely from a social media point of view and keep it very on brand. But then on my personal account, I'm just engaging as myself. So I think there's nothing wrong. I do think it's great to inject personality into your brand, especially now, because as a salon, one of the things I used to love about going to salon was chatting to my hairdresser and catching up and talking about my holidays and all that kind of stuff. But now, obviously, that relationship is going to shift slightly because you have the masks. You're not allowed to be too close to each other. So that relationship, the dynamics of that relationship are going to change. So I think that social media will become an even better way of showing personality behind your brand, the people behind your brand, because I know some brands who like Sophia Hilton. She's so much fun. Like, I love following her Instagram. Absolutely love. I think she's amazing. And you get a real sense of what she is like and what her business is like. And I think for me, that's going to be the way going forward, is they do it, not another salon do it so well. They have so much personality and it comes across really, really well. And I think for me, that's the way that businesses should be thinking about their social media going forward. Because like I say, that human contact is going to be diminished somewhat. How can you then inject that personality into your content? But yeah, I think it's perfectly fine to inject a bit of personality into your content, but obviously don't take it too far. Like one person I know who went out, got absolutely hammered and was posting on his company account. Like, no, dude, that's not the one.
No, not a good idea. Not a good idea, that one. But yeah, I think we see so many great, whether it's nail techs, hairdressers, therapists, so many people who really do get that. It is that personality, and I think that is something that it's something that the industries both do really well, having those personalities. So definitely show them where you can.
Yeah, I love the hair industry. It's just, there's so much fun on social media. Some of my clients are like accountants. Don't get me wrong, they're great. But the hair industry, people are so much fun. I always think the personality comes across so much, especially on their content. And I think going forward, that's going to be really key. So yeah, definitely get a bit of personality.
We do have, we've got some people saying, that they are a little camera shy as well. Do you have any tips maybe for, like little video advice or what you can do to sort of build yourself up a bit?
Yeah, so this was actually my issue. So like people say to me, oh my God, your videos are great. It's like, this has only been happening for the last, 4 or 5 weeks, Chris, because before that, I was absolutely petrified of going on. I wouldn't have done this a couple of months. I would never have had the nerve to sit here and be on camera because I'm thinking, oh my God, everybody's staring at me. Does my hair look okay? Does my weave look all right? So I suffered with this myself. And one day, to be completely honest, I just thought, just get over yourself, Lisa. Just do it. So what I do is I practice. So every morning I will get up and I will sit in front of my pink backdrop and stuff in my front room, and I'll do little videos of myself. And one of the things I do is I listen to music. So I'll sit there, I'll have a song on. Like this morning, it was Luther Vandross, Never Too Much. And I'll just sit there dancing away because it relaxes. I know it sounds silly, but it relaxes me and it makes me less nervous. And then by the time I come to film, I'm just like in a much more relaxed space. Whereas if I just start straight away, I'll just be like, and I won't be able to do it. So I kind of listen to music to kind of relax myself, to put me in a good mood, and just make me feel like happier, if you like. And then I just literally sit in front of my phone. I have my phone on a tripod. I sit in front of my phone and I just film them. And it's actually a hilarious process because it takes me about 15 attempts to get one video because I just giggle like crazy. Like there's one video where I'm just giggling for about 5 minutes. I literally couldn't stop. But my thing is, I just woke up one day and thought, you know what, we're on lockdown. I need to promote myself. I need to get over this fear of video and I just need to do it. And if you go back, I mean, I'll have to find it and repost it. My first video was terrible. I was kind of hunched over in front of the mirror, trying to be really serious. It was just the worst video ever. But, fast forward a few weeks and I've gotten more comfortable now. But yeah, I would just practice. That's what I do. I practice off camera. My mum laughs her head off at me because she'll see me sitting there going, hi, everyone. Hope you're having a great day. And it's like, what are you doing? But that's helps me. I know I look ridiculous. Oh, I sit in front of the mirror and I look absolutely ridiculous doing it, and I know I do, but it's helped me massively, and it means that now I'm a little more comfortable filming videos. So I would say, yeah, just relax yourself beforehand, however you do that, whether it's listening to music or whatever, and then just practice. That's all I do, is I practice every single day, and eventually you do get past those nerves. I know I have. I still have my moments where I'm like, ooh, but generally I've kind of gotten a bit more comfortable with it.
And obviously video is such a great way to get that engagement. And obviously a lot of the social platforms all love video in terms of their algorithms. And
yeah, and for me as well, if you look at the social word is very, it's not boring, not by any stretch, but it's very flat in terms of it's very wordy. So hard to punctuate that with a video of me actually talking about something, I think lifts the content. And like I was saying before, I found that since I started doing video, my engagement and stuff has gone up by about 37%. So it's definitely worked for me. It's daunting, but it's definitely worth doing.
We've got a comment here from Hannah who says she posts makeup videos of natural makeup, but when she sees others, they look filtered and they get more likes and comments. Is there any advice on that?
I would say to just keep doing what you're doing. And also I would say I know it's really easy because I fall into this trap as well. Like I follow other social media people who have more followers than me, they get more engagement than me, and I'm not going to lie, it's like, oh, they've got 1,000 likes and I've got like 12. Yeah, I'm not gonna lie, it does like bother me, but I just stick to what I do, and you know what I do well. So I'm not in competition with anybody. I think it's kind of you're lulling yourself into a false insecurity when you compare yourself to other people. So I would say the first things first is don't compare yourself to other people. I'm not somebody who wears makeup a lot, but I actually like the sound of this like natural makeup. I'm not somebody who likes those overly polished, overly edited images. I can't stand stuff like that. But I would say stick to what you're doing, and you know, if that's your niche, then stick to that. And as well, collaborate with people. Is there somebody who has a bigger following than you that also does that kind of makeup? Would they be interested in doing an Instagram live with you, doing an interview with you? You know, find ways to collaborate and get your message out there more, but don't change your style. If your style works for you and that's true to who you are and it's authentic, I would stick with that. Like when I first started the social word, I was like, is anybody going to be really interested in this, especially if it's not going to be really image based? But I found that, you know, like I say, especially recently, my audience has started to really grow and started to become more engaged. So I would say stick to what you're doing, but find other ways of talking about it. And I think collaborating with people is a really good way. But don't worry about what other people are posting. Leave them to post whatever they post. Focus on what you do and making that the best it can be.
I think that's really great advice. Definitely, I think definitely keep up with it, Hannah, and do let us know. Follow the Pro Beauty account as well, and tag us in things. We're more than happy to.
She can teach me because I don't know how to apply makeup, so she can probably teach me a thing or two.
There we go. And then we're nearly out of time, but we do have one question over on Facebook. I want to, somebody, Liz has said, could you explain more on how to create the waiting list on the stories? Would they come in order, and is it easy to record the engagements?
So you can see that in terms of your engagement, you can see it all in the insights, and it is pretty easy it's very, very easy to do. The beauty of Instagram is they make things very, very simple. So anybody can do it. But you don't have to be somebody like me. You don't have to be like working in social media for 10 years to be able to use it. So it's really, really easy to follow. Obviously, you don't have to do that. You do whatever works for you. But I think it's a really great way of firstly letting your audience know that you've got a waiting list, and it's a great way of using the platform. I think one of the things I've seen in the last 7-8 weeks is people are finding really ingenious ways of using social media. And when I saw Lisa doing that the other day, I thought, you know what, I've not seen that before. That's actually quite clever. But also, if you want to follow me on the social word, and if you want me to take you through it, I'm very, very happy to do that, because I appreciate that sitting here and talking about it is all well and good, but then having to go away and actually do it is a different matter. So feel free to follow me on the social word, and I'm happy to kind of talk you through it and help you with it.
Amazing. Well, thank you so much, Lisa. That has been a really, really great session, and I know there's been lots of lovely comments over in our chat. If you do want to follow Lisa, it's at the _social_word. Is that correct? Yes. Perfect. There we go. And obviously the links to that are up on the Pro Beauty account as well, and we'll obviously tag tag that through. So again, thank you so much, Lisa. And I hope everybody has enjoyed today's talk. We will have obviously more webinars throughout the week, so do check all of our socials and the links are all there. But otherwise, thank you everybody and have a great rest of the day.
Bye guys, take care. See ya.
Bye.